Okay, let's look at a few more things in this range. Eggs, tomatoes, and then touch on an English breakfast. A carton of eggs, so 12, 3.6 kilograms of CO2 equivalent. So a single egg has about the same footprint as 4 bananas even before you cook. Okay, so you're comparing things variously to a 10-ton lifestyle when it makes sense, or bananas, because we're using banana as the paradigm for how bad things are in terms of their carbon footprint when it comes to your daily life and everything that's involved, from buying clothes to washing them and eating and traveling and driving and so on. So how the carbon footprint of egg, not including cooking, cracks up. Wow, that's the English humor there. So nitrous oxide from farming is 45%. Nitrous oxide, remember, has a greenhouse warming potential, I think, of about 200 times that of CO2, much worse than methane as well as CO2 and many other things. Carbon dioxide from farming is 41%. Then you have methane from farming. Supermarket is adding something. Transport is a little chunk of it, and packaging is 5%. And obviously these do not include all the end-to-end calculation. For example, packaging could be styrofoam, which is bad and but non-biodegradable, could be plastic, could be getting into the landfill, and so on and so forth. In general, there are lots of concerns about the way meat is produced as opposed to um, vegetarian food that you can get, or plant-based meat as opposed to animal-based meat and protein even. Okay, so I just grabbed few pictures from this website, Animal Equality, so you can see how eggs are being produced here, since that's what we're talking about. The hens are locked up in these little cages where they cannot move much at all, and the eggs then roll down safely into this collection track where industrial processing becomes easier, picking them up, packaging and shipping them off, and so on. But there are various other details of tender meat, fattening up the animals, etc., that makes them get locked up in cages like this. You can see this is just inhuman, and some of the fattening of ducks, and there are also stories of how ducks are force fed with a tube to produce things like foie gras, which is a French pate. Tastes very good, goes very well with sauteing, but then it's like the carnivore's dilemma. You enjoy your meat, but do you want to know how it's being produced? Here is cattle being locked up in a circle for milking. So there's milk production going on in the middle. So you can always say free range meat is less environmentally detrimental and so on, but do you have the opportunity to buy it? Do you have the opportunity to find out how the meat is being produced, and so on? So I would just come back and say again, do the best you can and don't bang your head against the wall. And reduce waste. Always good to reduce waste, right? Let's move on to tomatoes after the eggs. 1 kilogram of tomatoes has 0.4 kilograms CO2 equivalent organic loose tomatoes, traditional variety grown locally in July. So seasonality of vegetables and fruits matters a lot, because they get shipped around across the world, which can add massive amount to the carbon footprint. It jumps to 9.1 kilogram of CO2 equivalent on average. So tomatoes, which are healthy, which are good, which are tasty, which are consumed a lot, can be environmentally quite large in their CO2 footprint. 50 kilograms CO2 equivalent organic on the vine cherry tomatoes grown in Ohio in March. There you go. Non-seasonality can make a massive difference. For the same impact as just 1 kilogram of the most energy-intensive tomatoes, a man weighing 224 pounds could eat his own body weight in oranges. So relative comparisons, but does this solve anything? Not necessarily. You are not going to be able to replace tomatoes with oranges. You need oranges, you need tomatoes, but it's a question of how to reduce your carbon footprint by buying appropriately and so on. Okay, so let's look at the carbon footprint of a full English breakfast and look at how to reduce it. So a standard full English breakfast has 3,746 grams CO2 equivalent. Again, take the numbers as relative because there are always complications. So you have sausage, which is massive, bacon rashers, which is massive, then you have tomatoes here, which is a significant chunk, add mushrooms, egg, baked beans, butter spread, a slice of bread, and ketchup. So there you have it. If you're an omnivore but lower carbon is your goal, then you can reduce it to 3,311 gram CO2 equivalent, so almost, let's say, 500 or so. Use whole meal bread, plant-based spread, seasonal and local tomatoes. So you can see our tomato footprint goes down. If you're a vegetarian, you can reduce it all the way down to 1,372 grams CO2 equivalent using vegetarian sausages. I don't know about their health impacts. If they have the meat taste by adding fat, then are they better or worse than sausage? Are they good at all? And so on. The taste, the oil, the fat is what gives it the taste, right? Plant-based bacon can be made to taste very similar, but what chemicals go into it, and then the rest of it here. Okay, so if you look at the greenhouse gas emissions in CO2 gram CO2 equivalent per serving, if you're talking about coffee versus adding some milk, or cappuccino, which has milk that is sprayed almost, and latte, which is just hot milk, then you can see that dairy milk for coffee, little bit of milk, and cappuccino and latte adds up to almost 800 depending on which one you choose. But if you use oat substitute for milk in all these, then you can reduce that footprint quite seriously. Does the taste match your preferences? You can try. I have obviously, I always, not so obvious, whenever I need to add milk, I always use soy milk, for example, but again, we talked about soy and how it can lead to deforestation because it's being fed in large quantities as animal feed and so on. Okay, so again, you want to wake up and you enjoy your breakfast and you want to worry about carbon footprint, there are ways to do it, but my own preference these days, or the last several months, this year mostly, is to just skip breakfast, because the intermittent fasting from the dinner to lunch is a perfect way to control diet and help the body and actually avoid fatigue in the afternoon after lunch and so on. But that's my metabolism, my genetics, so you figure yourself what is best for you. Breakfast is always argued to be the most important meal of the day, but this is not really something that is very rigorously scientific. Cynical people would argue that it mostly comes from cereal companies, and cereal companies will feed you a lot of sugar as well. So you have to worry about health aspects as well as carbon footprint when it comes to your breakfast, but you choose wisely as you see fit and how you prefer your breakfast. Okay.